All right, now let's make a pretty picture. Now I got ahead of myself a little bit. I really didn't need these zeros here. Um, and so what I want to do, I can accomplish this a couple of ways. Probably the easiest in the long run is to highlight these two columns, and then I'm going to do a right click and insert columns. The default so mine I can insert left or right, but some spreadsheets you can only insert on the left, and that's why I highlighted those two, so it would go to the left. And I am going to just copy and paste here and make that the rejection region. Now this is kind of ugly how this got moved over here. You can just leave it. We're not going to use it to make the pretty picture. If you don't like it over there, you can always cut and paste. I wouldn't copy and paste. If you copy and paste and then get rid of that, you're going to mess everything up over here. You need to cut and paste, or you could simply move these over to here. That might be the easier, safer thing to do, but again, it doesn't really matter. I inserted these two columns because I want three columns next to each other to make my picture easier to build. And so now I do need all these zeros, and so again, I can just make them again or something like that, but I'm just going to copy, and actually I could cut them because I didn't really need them over there, and paste. And so I've got all those zeros, and then I need a couple more zeros here, so there's a 0 and there's a 0. Yeah, I'd like everything centered so I can see it a little better. So I'll center it, and these probably need to be centered. Now, you know, and because I did that, that's all yellow. Does it need to be? You know, this is my work to get a nice picture, and so once I've gotten this far, I don't really care. So I could leave the yellow. I'm not going to present this part to somebody. Okay, so what I need to do is simply for the p-value, so that started here at the yellow, so it is easy for me to see there. I'm just going to say equals and what's in D there. So what I want to do is just replace, or have those same values here and here. Okay, and we'll see why in a moment. And then here, what I want to do to make it look a little better is I am going to just put in a constant in here, and that constant, I just kind of look in here where these are the biggest numbers for the probabilities, and it looks like, about 0.14 is the biggest, and so I'm going to put in here 0.14, and I'm going to copy it and paste it in there. Now we'll see what that just did. If I highlight those three columns from the column labels down, and I say insert a chart, and I make it a column chart, and then I'll just say finish. You see it highlighted those. I'll move it over here so we can see it a little better. Oops, trying to get it. I guess I'll go over here to there we go. There. So notice what it did. It made the normal distribution. That's my where I'm sampling from. And this is the assumed or null distribution here that I'm sampling from. And then here in the red is where I've summed up the p-values, and then the yellow that's where anything in there I would end up rejecting the null hypothesis, but anything to the left of that I don't. And you see, of course, my p-value went farther to the left than the yellow did, so I won't be rejecting the null hypothesis. I'll fail to reject it. We don't have enough evidence in our data to reject that null hypothesis. But I want to make this look a little better because we are using the normal distribution and so forth. I want to make this into a histogram from a bar chart. And so for me, I have to hit edit. Most spreadsheets you don't actually have to say edit first, but so now I want to go in here and play with some things. So format the data series. Before I do that, cancel. I do need to change my x values, remember, because see, these start at 1 instead of 0, and so they're off by 1. And so first I want to fix that, and that's usually something under your data series data ranges. And so here what I want to do is for categories I need to change that to be my can't really see them very well. Now I can see them. To be my bins, my centers of my bins. And so I'll highlight that and say OK. And so now we see I do go from 0. And let's see, we need to make sure, actually I'm not sure, this looks correct because that looks to be at 23, but what you want to do is make sure that when I did that for the 1, it did it for all of them. So if I click on p-values, categories are there, and rejection region categories are there. So it did indeed put them where they should be. Okay, so I have that. So I've fixed my x-axis by changing the categories for my column chart. And then what I want to do is format these series. And the colors are fine. I'm good with those colors. I could always change the colors, so we have that. Now I can never remember on these exactly where things are, but so spacing, it says 100%, overlap 0%. I think spacing, I want to take that down to 0%. So again, somewhere in your spreadsheet, and all spreadsheets are different. Oh wait, show bars side by side. Yeah, I don't think I want that. And see, there's some experimentation here, but I said spacing 0%, and now it says missing values, assume 0, leave gap. That's one and the same, but we don't really have missing values to speak of. But I think I want my spacing to be 0%, and let's try OK. And that didn't quite do it for me, and so I go back and I do my format data series, and let's try overlap. Let's try making that 100%. I wish I could just type it in, but I can't. And I'll say OK, and there we go. And actually, I'm surprised, but it did all of them at once. Yours may or may not. This one did. Now, so as we're looking at it, what's nice here is, see, I see the distribution, but then I see where my p-value region is, my data. My data came in here where it changed from blue to red, and so everything I count up for my p-value is everything over here to the right. Now, what I don't like is that the yellow is on top of the red. Okay, well, the way you tend to take care of that is within your data series data ranges, and you see the rejection region is the third thing. Well, this is plotting them in the order that you see here. So the last thing you plotted was the rejection region, and so one way to go would be to move it up to the top. Oh, I can do it this way. So worst come to worst, you could do that. That's not really what I want to do, but let's go see. And so here you can see it's working just fine. I can see that rejection region, and so that does a pretty nice job. And then however, another thing you can do, possibly, I can do it in this spreadsheet, is when I'm going to go back here and put this back at the last thing I do, and say OK. And again, I don't like that picture very much, but I'll format that series. So notice I'm hopefully just working with this yellow one. And on here there's transparency. And so I'm going to go with transparency, and the 50% looks pretty good, and I'll say OK. And isn't that awesome? So see, I can see the rejection region and how it goes over the p-value region and the whole distribution, and so I kind of like that, right? Again, the other way to do it is just make sure you plot rejection region first, but if you can, hey, this is a nice way to go. And then another thing I can do is notice, I've got all this white space over here, and there's this thing. So what I want to do is usually you can move your legend around and see. So when I do that, all of a sudden I get a much nicer picture, because I want that white space to show the 0 and so forth to the 33. And now, if I had a whole lot more, like with the Asian group, I won't want to go from 0, because that'll just make things probably kind of ugly. So I could always cut off my data, but for this one, I think it looks fine going from 0 to 33. It gives me this white space over here where I could put my legend in. And then the only things I'm missing are my axes titles, right? And so I can put those in somewhere here. Insert titles. Right? And some spreadsheets you can click on things up at the top ribbon up there, and I can too. I just never do. So title, this would be something like I might just use the AAB, since that's the abbreviation we've been using, and that way it doesn't take up too much room. So I can say something like AAB null population. I'm not sure. I've done this a few different times, and every single time I kind of come up with different titles. You don't have to use the exact titles I use, but this is something like, my African American Black group, null distribution. And actually null distribution, comma, p-value, and rejection region. Long title, but that will do it. The x-axis, right, is number reporting bias, and the y-axis is relative frequency. Okay, it's not the actual frequency because I'm using the probability, so it's relative frequency. And I say OK, and there we go. That's a pretty nice looking graph. Notice here when I did all that, that kind of got messed up, so I'll move it a little bit and move it up just a hair, like, well, let's see, that looks pretty good. Don't have the lines going right through them, and so there I have my normal distribution. Now I could call it my null distribution there. That would be fine. But we did use a normal distribution, and so I know that the null distribution is a normal distribution. So I've got that. I've got the p-value region, and then I've got my rejection region, and got my titles on the graph. So there we go. There's a very nice picture, and it didn't take too much to do this. Right? We had to add the two columns up here and insert those, and again, you don't have to insert them in the middle like I did to be next to this, but it just makes it way easier to add them all at once to a chart, and then work with making them look nice. So there we go.